Hey guys, it's Justin. You may be wondering, why am I recording a video in the car? Who gives an F? Well, one thing, I don't have to worry about the neighbors kind of like, I got really thin walls in my place and I really don't want them listening to me making videos and all that. I guess it doesn't really matter. It's just my personal preference. I like to multitask. I'm from the Northeast. We like to do multiple things at the same time. So anyway, all right, so why targeting keywords in Google search? Why is Google search bad? You're probably shaking your head and saying, what the hell is this guy talking about? How is that even? Google search is the best way to target my customers and get exactly the people that I want to my website. Well, I would have argued the same thing a few years ago, and I would still agree with you in large part today. But here's the thing, guys. The way that these platforms are evolving, especially Google, Google is the search giant. Everything was based on search intent. You target your customers through the intent that they show in the query that they type in. However, 10, 15 years ago, 90% of your traffic might have come from Google search. But now Google has changed their platform and their product offerings, and everything has evolved towards audience targeting. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't want to continue to advertise aggressively in Google search if you are and you're profitable. But where I'm going with this, guys, is the system is going to continue to evolve more and more and more towards audience-based targeting, audience interests, demographics, so on and so forth, with a focus of relying heavily on Google's AI for those optimization decisions. Now, I hate to say Google's kind of forcing our hand as advertisers and agencies and so on and so forth, that we have to rely on their AI because that's just the way the system is evolving. They're taking a lot of that control out of our hands. And part of the way the system is changing is it's moving away from as much intent-based targeting towards audience-based targeting. So what does this all mean? Well, number one, don't stop your Google search advertising. But number two, it would be very prudent of you to test different campaigns that are targeting based on various audiences. Now, if you don't know anything about audience targeting, it breaks down in a couple of different key categories. Number one is what they call warm audience targeting. That's people who have already seen your brand, seen your ads, visited your website, and you are retargeting them. That is, in the most typical base situation, the best pool of people to start with in terms of audience targeting. However, because those pools can be smaller than the broader cold audience pools, eventually even your warm audiences can start to burn out a bit. All right, so you want your warm audiences, then you want to look at cold audiences. Now, cold audiences can be, if with Google specifically, they break them down into what are called in-market audiences and then affinity audiences. Now, the next most relevant batch of audiences typically is your in-market audiences. The in-markets tend to convert better than the affinities. That's just my experience over and over and over again. I've seen that the in-markets just tend to work better than the affinities. So anyway, these are things you want to start to experiment with. Now, there's other forms of targeting that Google has. They have what they call topics. Then you have what are called custom intent audiences. Then there's custom affinity audiences. And some of these, then there's customer match audiences, which is basically you're uploading lists of your customers and then retargeting based on those lists in your database. So a lot of different ways to target warm and cold audiences, all of which you should experiment with and find what works best for your brand. And obviously the messaging, the creative, the landing pages and funnels and so on and so forth that you're pairing up with those audiences may change based on who you're targeting and what those audiences look like. Now, putting all that aside, what I want you all to start thinking about is how you have to really understand who your audience is. Now, it may sound cliche, and it may be like, yeah, okay, yeah, that sounds like good marketing advice. But really, guys, you really do need to understand who you should be targeting, who you are targeting, who's converting, which you can start to figure out by looking at your Google Analytics reports, who will tell you what audiences people are in who are converting. Even if you're not targeting audiences in the Google Ad UI, Google Analytics has in-market and affinity audience reporting that will show you, by the way, these are the audiences that your best customers are in. Then you could pull that data out and then use it in your Google Ads campaigns to target. So before 5 or 10, 15 years ago, you can just set up Google search campaigns and maybe a display campaign and you would be all right, because everything was based on keywords. Even the display campaigns and video campaigns used to primarily be targeted through what we called content targeting or contextual targeting. And the targeting was set up through keywords. You would set up keyword lists in the display campaigns. And that was the only way initially to run those campaigns. So all you had to do was think about, okay, what keywords would my customer type in? What, if I'm selling, red running shoes, you would probably bid on red running shoes. It was pretty straightforward. But now it's just the system is changing. And things are different than they were many years ago. So you have to keep that in mind and make sure that you're really researching who your customers are, and also realizing that they're going to fall into multiple buckets, or what we call personas or avatars is another way of saying it, that some people like to call it. These are the different categories of customers, typical buckets of customers, if you will, that you would target. Maybe you're e-commerce and you have a number of products that really are, popular with, young people who live by the water. I don't know, maybe it's surfboard. You sell surfboards, maybe you sell pink surfboards. So you have, 18 to 24 or 16 to 24 female buys that product more often than anybody else. So that's one category for you. Or maybe you sell marketing services, and maybe you're selling them to lawyers, and then you're selling them to plumbing companies. So, lawyers would be one bucket, plumbing companies would be another bucket. You get what I'm saying here. And so you have to research this and really document this and really understand what the demographics, the desires, the pain points, we call it, the fears, so on and so forth, what products and services may be best suited for those different personas. And you don't have to have a dozen. I mean, if you have a lot of different products, maybe you have more personas, but it's very typical for, a small, mid-sized company to have, a handful of personas for their 80% or more of their customers, and apply the 80-20 principle. Go for the low-hanging fruit first. You don't need to get crazy creating 100 personas. That's not going to be effective. You're not going to be able to support the marketing to create messaging and creative and pages and everything for 100 different personas, unless you're Coca-Cola or something like that, which you're probably not. So, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 personas, that would be a typical, if I had to put a general rule to it, that would be a typical, just a few at most different personas that you might target realistically and be able to have an effective marketing campaign, right? So that's it, guys. I really wanted to share this kind of inspiration. You'd have to evolve with the times here. And if you've been in marketing for a while and you're kind of like me, you may have that sort of OG old dog mentality where you're like, oh, well, I remember when we just targeted everybody by keywords and that was great. And well, believe me, I always start with keyword targeting. You're probably think I'm crazy, but I do start there. But knowing where things are and where things are headed, number one, if you don't test your end markets and you don't test customer match, you don't test retargeting audiences, you're missing out on a big part of the pie right now. And then secondly, I'm going to predict within 2 years, Google's going to move away from keyword targeting. I believe they are going to take away our ability to target queries. Now that may sound insane because they're the search giant and that almost doesn't make sense, but with the way they're going, I don't want to say for sure because that's really taking things to an extreme with this audience targeting. But the way things are headed, I wouldn't be surprised. I would put money that within a couple of years that they're either going to significantly lean out of keyword targeting or completely eliminate it as something that you can do as the advertiser. And then they'll say, well, the AI is going to decide for you. You just tell us what type of business you're in or give us some ideas, give us a few keyword suggestions, and then we'll take it from there. That's how I look at keyword targeting right now anyway, because of how things will match out. Even if you're on exact match, you'll still get close variants coming through on queries. So I look at keyword lists as suggestions to Google nowadays. Back in the day, exact match was exact match. Now it's no longer exact match. So look at it, keep in mind, anything you put in a keyword list is only a suggestion to Google, and that's how the system is going to take it. So anyway, that's how that all works, guys. Hopefully this is helpful, and I will see you on the next video.